Welcome to REST, which stands for Resiliency and Empowerment Seminar today. I'm your host, Susan Gans, and I'm the founder of Gans Strategic Solutions, which operates at the intersection of human behavior and business. This show is about talking to leaders of small, mid-sized businesses as well as nonprofits to hear about the journeys of these leaders, as well as about the missions of their organizations. And very importantly, we hear about how these leaders are being resilient, particularly in these challenging times. I'm so delighted today to have Scott Landers, who is the head of Figure 8 Logistics. So a bit about Scott. He began his lifelong fascination with water and food in East Texas, where he was born and raised on the sixth generation Landers family farm. He has since worked as a civil engineer, product director, and independent consultant to water and food organizations. Scott co-founded Figure 8 Logistics, where he currently works as a food delivery consultant. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering from MIT and lives in New York with his wife and Schnauzer. So welcome to our show.
Thanks, Susan. It's great to be with you.
Wonderful. So take us back in time, how you went from the farm to MIT to what you're doing now with your logistics company.
Sure. So I guess in short, food and water have been in my family for a long time. As you mentioned, six generations goes back to 1880 something on the same piece of land. And before
Amazing.
that, they were farmers still. so a lot of connection with food. So growing up in East Texas, when you have a summer and you're trying to harvest crops, and you don't get a rain, you very quickly understand the importance of water and what it means to have it, what it means to don't. And then that, of course, is the basis of how you get food and why farms exist and what we look to do. So I've always been fascinated with this. And when I was growing up, I also was a bit of a math and physics nerd. So I really enjoyed the math behind it all.
Yes.
And I came across MIT and I was like, oh, that's where people go to do math. So it was really kind of simple. And I applied and was, like most people didn't think I would get in, and then you do and your life changes. So when I went to MIT, I thought I was going to be just studying math and physics, and then I realized I'm much too hands-on. The farmer in me, is still very alive. So I ended up switching and discovered civil engineering. I didn't know what engineering was before MIT, ironically enough, and fell in love with civil and environmental engineering because it allowed me to do math, but it also allowed me, to literally get my hands dirty and go out and do experiments in water and mud and with soil and really get just a feel for how, the real world works outside of the lab. That led me to a career in civil engineering where I finally got to work on water and apply all of this passion and things that I had learned. And I was fortunate enough to be able to work on a pretty wide range of projects all across the country, for the smallest municipalities in the world, to some of the biggest companies in the world. And with that, developed an even stronger appreciation for this lifelong passion I had. But after a number of years working in water, I kind of rekindled my desire for agriculture and the country was coming back out in me. So the goal has always been to take the learnings around food and water and apply them back to the farm. That's probably the one thing that's been consistent throughout my life. But I realized I knew nothing about the consumer side of ag. I knew a lot about production, how to grow it, how to ship it, but I didn't know why people bought food. I didn't go to a farmer's market until I went to college. It's just not what you do in East Texas. So I felt like I was missing this whole other half of the equation, which is why people eat, how they make those decisions, how they choose. So we were living in Boston at the time and we're ready to move to a bigger city. So I applied to food jobs in New York. and ended up landing this senior leadership rotation role at Dig In, which is a restaurant chain
Nice.
here in New York. That gave me, over the course of 2 years, firsthand exposure to what it means to be a restaurant, to understand purchasing from farms, to understand selling to consumers, and really fill out the whole, um, economy around food. Um, and then that eventually led to, doing a lot of work with food delivery. That was a problem they identified that they needed some support with, and I raised my hand. And I never knew anything about food delivery, never had set foot in a kitchen before, but I was like, I know systems, I know engineering, I know transportation, I can work on this at least. And then ended up falling in love with food delivery as kind of this emerging way that we all interact with food that nobody really understood. And then that, of course, is where Figure Eight came from, is taking all those lessons learned and working to then make them more accessible and open to all restaurant operators.
So that brings me to a question about resiliency in the pandemic for these restaurants, some of whom were doing some delivery or limited delivery and quickly realized that they may need a more robust delivery system process. So can you share with us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think there's really two stages. The first stage, when indoor dining was closing and the only way you could get food was to have it delivered. The grocery stores were thin at the time. This is, back in March and April. It was a big push just to deliver at all, right? So a lot of restaurants, that was the
Yes.
first time they'd ever really started delivery or started thinking seriously about it. Before, maybe it was 10% of your business. It was this thing that brought in some extra orders. And that was great. Well, now it's 100% of your business, which is a completely different ballgame.
Yes.
So I think the first stage was just getting access to delivery, being able to open up that channel. I think the second phase is where it gets a lot more interesting, which is recognizing that long term delivery and offsite sales will likely be a much more significant percentage of your overall revenue. So whereas before it might have been 10 to 30% offsite and then 70 to 80% onsite, that's for a lot of restaurants, particularly the casual and fast casual restaurants in New York, at least, and a lot of other cities, that could go to 50-50. If
Wow.
indoor dining is reduced in capacity by 20 or 50%, and we're still struggling with a pandemic, then there's a real chance that delivery could be half your business for the next couple of years. I think that'll change depending on if you're quick service or if you're fine dining, of course, but I think nobody is questioning that it has gone up and it is here to stay.
Absolutely. And so you were a first responder of sorts in helping these restaurants to get their processes in place. Would you say that? Mhm.
In a sense, I mean, I can't really use that phrase. I mean, my mom worked in the ER, my dad's a paramedic, so they're
Ah,
the real first responders. But
right.
it felt like it. I mean, that intensity was there. I had a lot of clients who, when March 16th hit, that was the week that, like, I'll remember that date forever. When they first closed, indoor dining here
Yes.
in New York, and for some clients, we scrambled. I mean, for 72 hours, it was long days, and we were completely overhauled their system. One client, Naked Farmer in Tampa, Florida, they were scheduled to open up their first restaurant, brand new
Wow.
concept, April 1st.
Wow.
So when this hit, we knew we wouldn't be opening the restaurant for dine-in, but we knew we had already built all the infrastructure, all the logistics, all the technology to support on-demand e-commerce. Similarly, they had already built up a supply chain of local farmers and had access to local vegetables at a time when restaurants were closing. Farmers couldn't sell to restaurants. Grocery stores were out of food. And so in 72 hours, we used all that infrastructure that we had already built, but pivoted the menu to be a digital farmers
Wow.
market.
It's amazing. And it's so great how you inspired the creativity with these restaurants for them to thrive during this very difficult time. So how do you empower yourself and how do you empower others?
I think knowledge is power. It's, that's a real simple truth that just continues to come up again and again for me, which is, I don't want to just come in and fix their problem. I want to teach them how to fix their own problems and give restaurants the tools to be successful forever. Right. We not only work together for 2, 3, 4 months, but the results of what we build should last you 2, 3, 4 years at least. It's a pretty fast changing world. So I'd be hard
Yes.
pressed to believe that any of this will be, in the exact same form it is now in 4 years, but we should be able to design something that works for many years beyond, where we're here. So I think a lot of it comes down to, working with what you've got and committing first and foremost to being open and to getting it done. And I mean, that was the first question I would ask our restaurants, which is like, do you want to be open right now? Because if you're going to be open, it's going to be a fight every day. You're going to have to be working hard for it. It's like the first day you open a restaurant for everybody. And a lot of them said, yeah, we're here. We have people who want to work. We're going to follow the procedures. We want to be in business. So let's go. And at that point, once you have the commitment, you can really jump in and start to get very creative. But until you make that commitment, it's hard to really see what's possible. So I think a lot of it is working with restaurants to first make sure they know what they're signing up for and what they're committing to. And then, just continuing to give them as much knowledge and tools and information that they can need to be successful.
So important that the independence, so you support them in being successful and then they could take it from there and carry on, and also know that you're there to help them along the way if they run into the next challenge. So have you had mentors or sponsors along the way in your career that has shaped you along the way, just like you're providing mentorship to these businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to have a lot of really great bosses, which isn't something everybody can say. I think that what stood out to me the most was just how their level of trust. They recognize that maybe you've never done this before, but we're going to set you up and give you a safety net, and then let you go try. And you're going to have to learn it yourself, but we're here to support you. And I think that kind of bestowed trust and confidence goes a long way, which is you don't have all the answers. No one does, but we can come up with some ways to think about this in a process. And overall, just I can commit to you that I'll be here. So whether you get it right, whether you get it wrong, at the end of the day, like I'm still going to be here supporting you. So bringing that level of just commitment to restaurant partners and clients, I think it goes far beyond whatever advice I would give them on a daily basis. Is just knowing that they pick up the phone, we're going to answer.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate what you're saying, this opportunity to fail, and it's okay to make mistakes and you learn from those. And to me, that is just so powerful, creating that space to experiment and to be okay with making a mistake and not being tied to like, oh my goodness, I quote unquote failed.
Yeah, it's the only way you learn. I mean, especially when things are changing as fast as they are right now, mistakes are going to happen. I like to always think of it as like choosing my mistakes rather than letting them choose me. So
Like it.
I would rather intentionally maybe push a little bit and know that there's an opportunity that it won't work out the way I expect it to, but that I will have been the impetus for that break or that mistake, which ultimately will then translate into a learning. And then the next time we go out and do it, we don't make the same mistake twice.
Right.
But I would much rather take a proactive approach to trial and error and learning than just waiting for the next crazy thing to come out of left field, which seems to be every day these days.
Absolutely. So in letting people sort of be free to make these mistakes and be resilient, thinking back to your younger self where you might have made mistakes, what advice do you give to your younger self now that you have some perspective?
Well, I definitely made a lot of mistakes. I always say that that's how I know more than you do, is because I made more mistakes than you do, or you have. I messed up more than anybody, but I think it's all in how you mess up, right, or how you make a mistake and frame it. Um, I think part of the advice is one, just that assurance that like you're going to make mistakes, you're going to keep making mistakes. Your older self is going to make mistakes, but it's all in knowing how to make mistakes. So I would, when I had a team, I would, and well, even I guess I have a team now. Again, it's been very
Yes, you
different,
do.
but um, I tell them, think about the reversibility of your decisions. If it's a reversible decision, go make it, because the worst that's going to happen is we'll control Z. It'll be undone. If it's an
Right.
irreversible decision, we need to really think about that. Like before you sell the farm, right? Like we should talk.
Right.
But if you're gonna take an experiment with planting a new crop, go for it. Worst that's gonna happen is you'll learn something. So I think it's all about like the reversibility of decisions, and then make small mistakes. I think part of the skill of making mistakes is you make a bunch of little tests along the way, and some of them will be
Yes.
successful, some of them won't, but all in, you're kind of trending in the direction you want to go, as opposed to waiting until you tee it all up and then it's too much risky. It's either all going to work or it's all going to fail, as opposed to making little corrections along the way.
Yes, I think what you're talking about is perspective, pilots, trials to see how things are going before doing a full blown
Yeah,
rollout of things.
always be testing.
That's a good line. Always be testing and listening, I guess, for the feedback too, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so, question for you being based in New York City right now, what are you doing for your own sort of self care during these times?
Yeah. Um, well, twofold. I guess professionally, I try to eat out whenever I can, which is one, we couldn't for a while. And so now, of course, we all want to. But two, you know, really try to support your local restaurants. I mean, I think anytime I can, that's not always. I mean, I wish I could eat out every night. I can't do that. But whenever you can, like, go out and support your restaurant. That's the way the economy works, is when everything seizes up, it stops moving, and it's that movement that like keeps the community flowing, right? And the money flowing. So part of it is like, if you've got $10 and you can afford to buy coffee from your local coffee maker, do it. That will pay dividends. It'll circulate. um, I guess more personally, we've started waking up, or like, this started back in like summer when it was sun was rising at 5 a.m. and a lot of it stuck. Is we just now find ourselves waking up 5:30 every day, take the dog for a walk. We'll go for a nice long walk while it's cool, and then you're able to come back, shower, have some breakfast, and start your day, and you feel like you've already had some movement, you got the blood flowing, and then 8 a.m. is a little less scary.
Yes, and that walking is something that I love to do as well, and really refreshes the mind to step away from the day to day for a bit and just take in the environment.
And
So
then I think
thank
the
you.
last thing that we do is I try and keep my phone turned off on Saturdays,
Uh,
like just fully off. It's like, if it's on, I'm going to be tempted to check LinkedIn or respond to an email, and it's like I need that 24 hours of just physical separation from the internet.
yes, that's I'm sure hard to do, yet very important to give you that just that space to be fully present for yourself, for your wife, for your dog, for your loved ones, for your friends. Say, hey, I'm just gonna be in the moment. So powerful. So, in wrapping up our discussion today, what would you like our audience to remember about our conversation?
I think it all goes down to, be willing to like take control, whether that's through taking control of your mistakes and choosing your mistakes, taking control of your business and recognizing that there's no one coming to save you, which at the end of the day, once you swallow that, is actually very empowering. It means that you will kind of stand on your own 2 feet and will live or die by the work that you do. And that's important, I think, especially for small businesses that don't have cushion, and are out there every day. I think, um, you know, take control, and knowledge is power. So that's a big step of it, is if you feel like you can't take control, go find a lot of online resources and read up on it. There's been so much published in the last 6 months. I can't keep track of it. I mean, even within my little world of food delivery, you know, the resources that I wanted as an operator myself 3 years ago didn't exist. Now
Wow.
there's 5 resources for any question I could ask. So a lot of it is knowledge is power, and taking that control is, you know that action goes back into you, and really gives you that confidence.
It seems that several of my guests have this thematic about the power is within the individual to be their best selves and to move forward. And I think during this time, it's so important to remind people of that power of choice that you're talking about choosing your mistakes, choosing to be in control of your business, and choosing to take on the knowledge is power and do the research and choosing to do the work. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So how can people find you, Scott? Because we want them to reach out to you. What's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way is, they can head on over to our website, figure8.delivery. That's the number 8. Or they can send an email to hello@figure8.delivery.
So I'm going to repeat that for everyone. So that's figure the number 8.delivery, or an email to hello@figure8 the number 8.delivery.
Yes.
Scott, I so appreciate you sharing your leadership tips, the control, the knowledge is power with our audience today. And to our audience, remember that the power is within you. And I look forward to the next conversation.